Hello.
Hey! Welcome to day 2 of the collector panels. Just going to give you a quick thing about the cereal boxes. They will be available through the middle doors at the end of the discussion. So please wait till the end of the Q&A. It's going to be, there'll be enough for everybody in the room, so no need to panic, no need to rush. So beyond that, I guess I'm going to introduce Shane Turgeon. He's going to be our first speaker. You're going to get your cereal boxes, but if you're not careful, you just might learn something too. He's going to teach us something all about animation collecting. So take it away, Shane.
Thanks, Guy. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shane Turgeon. I'm actually kind of known as the Star Wars tattoo guy. We've got a Star Wars tattoo pavilion going on in the exhibit hall right now, and I'm the author of The Force in the Flesh and the curator of tattoosandtoys.com. But while I'm known for all the tattoo stuff, first and foremost, I'm a vintage collector. I've been collecting for 20 years, and one of my passions is animation art. It's something that I come to enjoy, looking for different things to move into from just standard vintage action figure collecting. It's kind of where everyone starts, but there's a lot of different other ways you can take your collecting. And I've always loved cartoons, and I've always loved animation, and the ability to own animation on TV was very appealing. So I started focusing and learning a lot about animation art several years ago, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So let's get started, shall we? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the history of Star Wars and animation. Star Wars got its start in its animated form by a company called Nelvana. Nelvana was started by 3 gentlemen in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. They were fresh out of animation school. They were kind of jaded with the industry, and they wanted to start and do their own thing, so they started their own company. The first project that they ever did was a feature-length animated movie called The Cosmic Christmas. And this was done in the mid-'70s, and it's kind of got a cult following, and it's really, really popular. And it's so good, in fact, that it caught the attention of one George Lucas. George Lucas saw the Cosmic Christmas. He was very impressed with it, so he invited them to come out to discuss a certain project that he had in mind just after Star Wars came out. That project was the infamous holiday special. I don't know how many of you have had the pleasure, shall I say, of seeing the holiday special. It is something like awesome. I used to try to force people for it. I'm like, you think you're a Star Wars fan, huh? This was back in the bootleg days of VHS, and it wasn't quite as easy to get. I'm like, yeah, you like Star Wars? Let's try to sit through this, and I made people sit through the 2 hours trying to see it. For those of you who haven't seen it or don't know much about it, it's a 2-hour special. It originally aired on CBS Thanksgiving of 1978. A lot of people think it was a Christmas special, but it actually aired in Thanksgiving. It was a Thanksgiving special. And it basically followed Chewbacca's family around their holiday of Life Day, and it focused on Han Solo trying to get Chewbacca back to Kashyyyk, so he could spend the holiday with the family, but the Imperials had invaded the planet, and there was lots of obstacles and stuff. It had B. Arthur in it, and who doesn't love B. Arthur? Harvey Korman, both of whom have died since. But yeah, it was interesting. But the best part about it, and most people will agree that the best part about the show was an animated short, which was produced by Nelvana, and it's called The Story of the Faithful Wookiee. This is the actual official title that Nelvana and Lucasfilm gave this short. And it ran in the middle, and it featured all of our favorite Star Wars characters, and it was the first time they were animated. It was a really distinct look, and that was one of the reasons that George Lucas chose them. Some of the animators at the time were really heavily influenced by the French artist Moebius, and you can see that if you watch that show, you can see a lot of the Moebius influence in a lot of the artwork. And of course, the biggest thing that this animated short is known for is the introduction of Boba Fett. It wasn't The Empire Strikes Back, it was the holiday special where we got to see him. And Boba Fett, it was kind of tricky. He played a friend, he tried to convince everybody that he was a good guy, and in the end he was working for Darth Vader and screwed everyone over. So after the holiday special aired, we didn't have any more Star Wars animation until 1985. And what came from that was the Droids and Ewoks Adventure Hour. After Return of the Jedi came out, Lucas's plans for continuing the franchise wasn't quite looking like 1999. He was hoping it was going to be a lot sooner than it was. So he figured to fill the gaps that they would put an animated series together, and it ran a couple of years after. The Droids series only lasted for one season, and the reason for that is because it involved a lot of production art. The Ewoks were based on Endor all the time. That's where they stayed. So they just had forests to draw all the time. Whereas the Ewoks, every 4 episodes, they were changing masters, and every episode they were changing planets. So the amount of design work that went into every episode of the Droids was staggering compared to the Ewoks. And in the end, it just didn't prove to be as popular either. The Ewoks were cute and cuddly, and everyone's rage of the day. So the Ewoks ended up going for a second season, but because the audience was changing a little bit, the second season of Ewoks is geared a lot more towards preschoolers, and instead of being like half-hour episodes or 22-minute episodes, they've actually broken each 22-minute episode is broken into 3 shorts, so there's 3 different episodes in the second season. Some characters that don't get a whole lot of play, but a lot of people, particularly some in this room, seem to enjoy. Flix, Thal Joven, I have a Thal Joven character focus. Kia Mall, I know a few of you guys like Flix and Kia Mall. Moray, Ewoks, there's a lot of different unique characters that came out of these series. The Droids cartoon was great because it actually had some original trilogy characters such as Boba Fett, IG-88, Max Rebo Band, and Stormtroopers were all showed up in it. And Stormtroopers actually showed up in the very last episode of the Ewoks as well. Then there was a real lull from 1985, 1986 to 2002. Star Wars wasn't animated again until Gennady Tartakovsky. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That's one name I could never ever figure out how to say. He was famous for his Samurai Jack cartoons and other things, and he produced the Clone Wars micro series. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not the biggest fan of the prequels, but I love these cartoons. I thought they captured everything that was epic about Star Wars. It was just like action-packed. The first 2 seasons were only 3-minute shorts, and they were on the Cartoon Network and in Teletoon in Canada. And they were just short 3-minute fills that they put at the end of episodes into their regular shows. And people went bananas for them. They were so good. When season 3 came out, they were lengthened to about 15 minutes, and a lot of the stories in season 3 actually tied into Revenge of the Sith, that came out shortly after the series. A little bit of trivia there. Anakin and Obi-Wan in the final episodes end up on the planet called Nelvan. And if you remember the spelling, it's a distinct tribute to Nelvana, the original production company. So that was really cool to do that. Now we have the current Clone Wars, which is a completely computer-generated animated project. Season 2 just finished. I should have updated that. But they're full-length episodes. I'm going to be honest, I've only seen the first season, but I love it, man. Wow, what a great series. Hey, this is really, really, really cool stuff. The fact that it's entirely CG, when we get into talking about actual collecting animation, leads us to a problem. So we'll get into that a little bit later on. Well, we're going to do that right now, I guess. Collecting original animation. We have 7 different topics to cover. There's such things as Seri-Cels, limited edition cells, limited edition art, production drawings, model sheets, production cells, production material, and concept art. For those of you who aren't familiar with animation art, this might seem a little overwhelming. There's a lot of different things that you can collect all of a sudden. It's like, oh, you just thought of some cells. There are a lot of avenues you can collect in animation art. So we're going to go through all of them, and hopefully by the end of this, you might feel a little more comfortable in what you're looking at. If you're looking through some dealer booths this weekend, you might see some stuff and be like, yeah, I know what that is. So the first thing we're going to talk about are Seri-Cels. Now, the most important thing to remember about these is they're not used in production. What they've done is they've made limited edition cells that are created specifically for the collector's market. From the holiday special, the Droids and Ewoks cartoons, there have been 6 different Seri-Cels produced. These were produced by a company called Royal Animated Art in the late 80s, early 90s. And basically, they ended up with the majority of Lucasfilm's stock on all the cells. They just shipped it to these guys because they were a big animation house at the time and they were selling animation art. So they came up with these Seri-Cels. They basically took 6 of the most striking images, 2 from each show, and they put them together and they just sold them in limited edition cells. But we all know what limited editions were like back then. Not so limited. These things are everywhere. And you know, I remember back in the day, a friend of mine picked up the Boba Fett one, and he paid like $400 for it. I mean, you're lucky to get $20 for those these days. So you know, there was a lot of hype around those cells. So these are the cells that the Seri-Cels that were produced for the holiday special. These are the ones that were produced for droids, and these are the ones that were produced from the Ewoks. So the Ewok cells were actually made from the second season. And the way you can tell the difference between the second season and the first season of Ewok cells, most notably is Ewok's cowl, or Wicked's cowl. It's brown in the first series, and it's green in the second series. So if you ever see these cells for sale, these particular 6, it's good to note that these aren't actual, these are production cells. These are Seri-Cels that are made specifically for the collector's market, and there are a lot of them out there. There's limited edition Clone Wars cells. These are also not used in production, but they're really cool because the way the Clone Wars was produced is they do all the production drawings in pencil, they scan them into a computer, and then they digitally color them and digitally animate them. So the next best thing that you could get, since there weren't any actual acetate cells, is they took acetate, they scanned it in, they printed out the pencil drawings on acetate, and then they had an artist hand paint them. So they're all one of a kind, and they're all hand painted, and they're an obvious nod to traditional animation art, but they're not actually used in production. And these were all produced by Acme Archives, who have a big booth down in the exhibit hall, and they have a lot of, they deal in a lot of different companies' animation art. They were also very, very expensive. A lot of the prices on these were anywhere from like $750 to $1,000 to $1,200 when these came out, but they're very cool. There's other types of limited edition art which are also produced by Acme. There's G-Clay prints, there's model sheets, there's character keys, and there's pixels. So at the top here we have the G-Clay prints. So what they've done is just they've basically taken a still image from the show and they've printed it out on a high quality paper. The term G-Clay gets thrown out a lot, but it just basically means fancy paper. And it's a print on fancy paper, and they put it in with a frame and a mat and a limited edition number on it. The model sheets and the character keys are really, really, really popular. The character keys in particular, and basically it has the animated character and then different production drawings in the pre-production process shown on there. Just to illustrate certain design elements and things like that. As well as the pixels, which are here, and these are a relatively new thing. This was patented by Acme and Epson, the printer company. And what they've done with these is they found a way to print onto acetate. So acetate's what animation cells are made of. That's the cell. They take the image from the computer and they print it onto the cell like a hand-painted cell, and then they take a G-Clay background and make a G-Clay print of the original background. So because the way the Clone Wars is produced, it's all done on the computer. This is one way that they've made art available to people who like to collect traditional animation art. They basically made cells that they printed out of the computer and backgrounds that they printed out of the computer, and they made them available for sale. They're also hand-signed and numbered. They're a unique collectible unto themselves. But I don't like that stuff very much. I like original animation art. I'm old school. I'm a vintage collector. I'm old school. I like animation art. So we're going to talk a lot about original animation art and what's available. And these are the cells that are actually used in the production process of making a cartoon. There's different terms you're going to become familiar with here, like master cell or key cell setups. There's numbered codes that become important. Every cell will have a code written on the bottom. For example, E-12-3